Hello and welcome to the program today. I'm Layo Olarinde. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa and Angolan President João Lourenço have highlighted visions for enhanced economic collaboration between the South Africa-Angola Business Forum held at the CIR International Convention Center in Pretoria. President Ramaphosa emphasized the need for African countries to move beyond their traditional roles as suppliers of raw materials in global value chains, while President Lourenço underscored the natural complements between Angola and South Africa as leading economies within the South African Development Community region. The forum on Thursday brought together business leaders, representatives from development financing institutions, and senior government officials to discuss ways to boost trade and investment flows between the two leading Southern African economies.
We can't leave to the presidents.
The era has passed of African countries being locked into the lower end of global value chains as mere suppliers of raw materials. And we've been raising this issue for years, and we now need to see traction. And in this regard, as South Africa, we are most impressed with President Lourenço's vision for the Lobito Trans-Africa Corridor as an economic development zone. The Development Bank of Southern Africa is already supporting the development of the Lobito Railway Corridor, and we are keen to explore other avenues so that we can enhance and enrich our collaboration in this regard.
Also during the same meeting, South Africa's President Ramaphosa reiterated calls for the Global South to have permanent representation on the UN Security Council. It follows the Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres' visit to the country on Wednesday, when he backed Africa's demand for 2 permanent seats at the UNSC. President João Lourenço, on his part, addressed fighting within Africa, urging the conflict-stricken Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, to take the path towards peace and consider a peace agreement.
I want to reiterate our position with regard to the suffering of the people in Palestine and continue to call for a ceasefire to be installed. And we also want the war between Russia and Ukraine to come to an end. South Africa stands firm on its call for the institutions of global governance.
Well, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres re-echoed his support for Africa's demand for 2 permanent seats at the UN Security Council. This was while addressing the Parliament of Lesotho. Secretary General Guterres stressed the fact that Africa has enormous potential. However, he says deep injustices are denying the continent's rightful place on the world stage, mainly not having a permanent seat in the Security Council. He also underscores that nearly 80 years after the creation of the Security Council, Africa still awaits even a single permanent seat, and this hurts the Council's effectiveness, legitimacy, and credibility. In the meantime, the Senate of Zimbabwe has approved legislation to abolish the death penalty, a crucial step towards eliminating a law that has not been applied in the country for nearly 20 years. On Thursday, Parliament confirms that senators passed the bill the night before. The death penalty will be abolished once the president signs it, which is anticipated. Well, Zimbabwe has utilized hanging as its execution method, with the last execution taking place in the year 2005, and that's partly due to a shortage of individuals willing to take on the role of executioner. President Emerson Mnangagwa has led the country since 2017, and he has voiced his opposition to capital punishment, sharing his own experience of being sentenced to death during the Independence War, a sentence that was later commuted to 10 years. He has also used his power to grant amnesties that convert death sentences to life imprisonment. Well, Amnesty International has urged President Mnangagwa to sign the bill into law without delay and also to commute the sentences of those on death row. Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Tuga, is calling on ECOWAS member states to demonstrate a strong commitment to facilitating and improving trade within the sub-region. He made the call at the 93rd Ordinary Session of Ministers of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, in Abuja. Ambassador Tuga, who is also the chairman of the ECOWAS Council of Ministers, pledged Nigeria's commitment to private sector investments and partnerships across the region. Our correspondent, Victoria Longjohn, reports.
The headquarters of the ECOWAS Commission is once again hosting the 93rd Ordinary Session of the Council of Ministers. Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Tuga, is chairing the meeting, flanked by the ECOWAS President, Omar Toure. Delivering his opening address, Ambassador Tuga, who is the chairman of the ECOWAS Council of Ministers, made a case for improved regional economic cooperation.
The current inter-regional trade percentage, which hovers around 12 to 13%, is significantly low compared to other regions. We must therefore leverage existing instruments to promote greater regional economic cooperation, such as the ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme and the ECOWAS Investment Code. We must tackle the issue of non-tariff barriers, operationalize and modernize border posts, and enhance the joint border management process. Excellencies, let me use this opportunity to affirm Nigeria's commitment to this process.
However, the president of the ECOWAS Commission, Omar Toure, calls for more community levy remittances from member states.
For now 6 consecutive years, the community levy remittances from the member states have been declining. This year, as of 30 October, the community institutions received only 40% of the approved funds from the community levy, thereby hindering the implementation of the community work programs. This council has a critical role in the realization of the many objectives we set for ourselves. The role of our member states in providing the necessary resources, removing non-tariff barriers, and implementing other regionally agreed policies and commitments remain vital.
The ECOWAS president also commended the peaceful elections conducted this year in Liberia, Senegal, Togo, and Ghana, which he says is a testimony of enduring democracy in the region. From Abuja, Victoria Longjohn for Channels Television News.
Well, let's now bring you the track of UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres speaking of his support for Africa's demand for permanent seats at the UN Security Council. He was speaking while addressing the Parliament of Lesotho.
We all know Africa's enormous potential, but let's be clear, deep injustices are denying Africa's rightful place on the world stage. These injustices share a common root, a global system designed without African voices, maintained without African participation, and perpetuated despite African protests. When a continent that is home to nearly a fifth of humanity remains systematically excluded from global decision-making, we must call this what it is, a relic of colonialism that has no place in today's world. Start with the UN Security Council. Nearly 80 years after its creation, Africa still awaits even a single permanent seat. This hurts Africa, but it also hurts the Council, its effectiveness, its legitimacy, and its credibility. From Sudan to the Sahel, conflicts rage and communities suffer. And these crises demand not just global attention, they demand African leadership. Yet Africa has no permanent voice when the world decides on matters of war and peace in Africa through the Security Council. That is unacceptable and it must change.
China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi says Beijing has agreed with Egypt that both nations should promote peace and negotiations to achieve stability in the Middle East. Mr. Wang made the remarks during a meeting with his Egyptian counterpart Ba Abdelati in Beijing, China. He says both countries are deeply concerned about the current situation in Syria and called for respect for the nation's sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity. Well, both countries have also welcomed a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Lebanon. In South Africa, Spaza shops must be owned by South Africans, and that's a message coming from Action South Africa. This follows a warning from President Cyril Ramaphosa, who recently gave Spaza shop owners 21 days to register their businesses after a tragic series of food poisoning incidents linked to the deaths of children. Just days ago, another child, aged 10, died after allegedly consuming snacks from a Spaza shop. Our South Africa correspondent, Innocent Samosa, has more.
Following the recent deaths of children due to suspected food poisoning in South Africa, opposition party Action SA took to the streets of Soweto, calling for Spaza shop to be exclusively owned by South Africans. The political party, led by its president Herman Mashaba, marched in protest against the growing number of Spaza shops run by illegal foreign nationals.
The president's engagement with us South Africans 2 weeks ago, giving illegal foreigners 21 days to register their Spazas in South Africa. This is something for us as Action SA. It is for that reason we are here this afternoon with members of the community who are affected by this, because we cannot, in the lives of our South African people who live in despair, that are unemployed, businesses in our communities are being destroyed by this illegality.
The group also handed over a memorandum of demands to the city of Johannesburg.
So we are not going to apologize for wanting to know and have accountability in this matter. And if there is big business that is involved in this matter, we want them to be found out, because we know that there is nefarious things that are happening in our communities.
In a bid to curb the deaths, the government had previously placed a temporary ban on food vendors operating within school premises. However, many are questioning whether this approach addresses the root cause of the issue.
This decision has had a significant negative impact on us. When we received the memo from the school stating that we are not allowed to trade outside the school premises, we had already purchased stock for sale. Now we are left with unsellable products and no way to recover the money we spent. It's a loss that is both frustrating and painful, and I've now been unable to trade for 2 weeks.
As the deadline looms, Action SA continues to call for stronger measures to ensure that South African-owned businesses are the only ones serving local communities. Our attempt to speak to foreign Spaza shop owners was indeed unsuccessful. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Samosa, Channels Television News.
Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni is defending the use of military courts to try civilians following an outcry over the arrest and trial of opposition leader Kizza Besigye. 80-year-old Museveni said any crime involving a gun was dealt with in a military court to ensure the country's stability, as civilian courts took too long to deal with the cases. His 60-year A 68-year-old rival had been charged in a military court with possession of pistols and attempting to purchase weapons abroad. Well, these are accusations Kizza Besigye denies. Mr. Besigye found out on Tuesday that he would be spending Christmas in custody as his trial has been delayed until January 2025. Hundreds of civilians have been tried in Uganda's military courts, even though the Constitutional Court has ruled against the practice. An estimated 9 million children are out of school across Ethiopia due to ongoing violence, climate-induced disasters, and widespread forced displacement, a staggering threefold increase from the year 2022. Well, at the conclusion of a joint high-level mission in Ethiopia, experts called for bold donor action to step up new and innovative financing solutions to deliver quality education for millions of children caught in crisis in Ethiopia and beyond. The Education Cannot Wait ECW's high-level delegation traveled to the Tigray region, and that's a region that's recovering from a 3-year conflict that brought education to a complete stop. The delegation also visited schools benefiting from funding by ECW and strategic partners, meeting with children, their parents, and teachers.
We have submitted and invested about $93 million plus already in Ethiopia for education and holistic quality education, teacher training, addressing mental health and psychosocial services, sports, art, and so forth. Ethiopia cannot wait. 9 million children are out of school. It's a country affected by conflict, but also by climate-induced disasters. And we have great partners on the ground working through joint programming. The beauty of coming out here is to see these UN agencies and local organizations and civil society working together, seeing the smile on the faces of the children, seeing the work that they can produce during lessons. It's possible. So I would appeal more funding and resources needed for Ethiopia, a country that deserves all our solidarity and support and empowerment, nothing less.
Ethiopia has faced so many crises, and each time there's a crisis, people move. If there's a flood, people have to move to get out of the floodwaters. If there's a drought, they move to find water for their animals. If there's a conflict, they move to escape the conflict. And each time people move, children are displaced, they can't go to school. In some cases, schools are destroyed or damaged through flooding or through conflict, and people who move often take over schools so they have a safe place to live. All of these things affect children's ability to go to school, and also the protective services that are needed. These children have gone through so much, and ECW's support also helps protect them, helps address their mental health and psychosocial needs so that when they sit in a classroom, they can actually focus on the learning.
Well, as part of efforts to ensure accessible and affordable healthcare for all, the Lagos State Health Management Agency commemorated the 2024 Universal Health Coverage Day with an awareness walk. The walk traversed the Lagos State Government Secretariat, Alausa Ikeja, and its environs, drawing attention to the importance of health insurance under the Ilera Eko initiative. Speaking on the significance of the event, the Permanent Secretary of LASHMA, Dr. Emanuela Zamba, emphasized the agency's pivotal role in driving universal health coverage in Lagos. Dr. Zamba highlighted the agency's achievements, including the rollout of an equity fund that guarantees healthcare access for over 300,000 vulnerable residents. The Executive Secretary of the Lagos State Blood Transfusion Service, Dr. Bodunri Oshikomaya, says the state government has also integrated blood transfusion services into Ilera Eko Health Plan. And the senior health specialist at USAID's Local Health System Sustainability Project applauds the Lagos state government's progress in the UHC implementation.
In Lashma, we are the main drivers of universal health coverage on behalf of the Lagos State government. And so we felt that it is necessary, especially since the theme this year says health, it's on the government. So we are showing how it can be done the Ilera Eco way. And we've had several activities. This is one of those activities that we are using to mark the entire week, just to create awareness and ensure that people come on board, because health insurance is actually the way to go to safeguard the quality of your life. We have an arm of Lashma that is responsible for vulnerable coverage. So with the Equity Fund from Lagos State, with the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund from Federal, and with the support of private and philanthropists all over, even development partners, I believe you've spoken to some of them today, we all come together to be able to provide funds to be able to cover the vulnerable. Right now, we've covered over 300,000 and counting in Lagos State, who are people that cannot pay for themselves.
There's also a bit of blood transfusion services installed into this Ilera Eco plan. For example, if you come, you don't have to be afraid that you will need to be transfused with blood or not, because every year per annum you have at least 2 units of blood in, and if you need more, the Ilera Eco plan is also able to ensure that you get it.
A lot has been done. Lagos State has shown commitment, political commitment, and backed by funds, to achieve universal health coverage. We've watched policies being implemented, laws being enacted to support what Lashma has been doing. And USA, through the Local Health System Sustainability Project, has been providing technical assistance across several departments in Lashma to push universal health coverage.
And that's it on the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde. Have a lovely weekend.